Hey friends, welcome back. You're listening to the Still Bible, where the teachings of Jesus flow softly like calm waters, bringing peace to your heart and rest to your soul. Tonight, we settled into a story of stillness, a gentle invitation to lay your worries before the one who speaks peace over every storm within you. Somewhere, a candle flickers by the bedside, its small light swaying in rhythm with the breath of the night. Outside, the wind sighs softly through the branches, and in that sound, something sacred stirs, the whisper of divine comfort drawing near. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're listening from somewhere far or near, share your location and local time in the comments below. I'd love to know where you're resting tonight. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's reflection together. The evening was still over the land. The kind of stillness that feels alive with waiting. The sun had long slipped beyond the horizon, leaving a faint amber glow upon the edges of the sky. Along the hillside, the small town rested, its lamps dimmed, its windows warm with quiet light. In one of those homes, a woman moved gently about her small room, folding a blanket at the foot of her bed. Her heart, however, was not quiet. Thoughts wandered through her mind. Memories of the day, worries for tomorrow, echoes of things said and unsaid. She paused by the window and looked out toward the darkened hills. The stars above her blinked like tiny lamps of promise, yet peace still felt distant. She remembered how often she had heard Jesus speak of rest, not the kind the world gives, but the rest that settles deep into the soul, beyond fear, beyond striving. She could almost hear his voice again, the tone calm and sure, speaking to those who came to him burdened and weary. "Come to me," he had once said, in a field bathed with sunlight, "and I will give you rest." Now, in the hush of the evening, she closed her eyes and breathed deeply. The air smelled faintly of olive trees and the last hint of the day's warmth. The same voice that once stilled the storm now whispered peace over her troubled heart. She didn't need to see him to know he was near. His presence lingered like a steady hand upon her shoulder, unseen, yet deeply felt. Somewhere in the distance, a shepherd's flute played a slow, soothing tune. It drifted across the valley, rising and falling with the rhythm of the night wind. The melody reminded her of something she had once witnessed, a night when Jesus stood by the Sea of Galilee. The sky had been dark then, too, and the waves had risen fierce and loud. The disciples had feared for their lives, calling out for help. But Jesus had only lifted his hand and spoken one word, and suddenly the sea had grown calm. That same stillness seemed to reach her now, though the storm was only inside her own heart. She whispered into the quiet, as though speaking to him directly, "Lord, help me rest tonight." No thunder answered, no miracle lights appeared in the room, yet the peace came anyway, softly, like water soaking into dry earth. The rhythm of her breathing slowed. The tightness in her chest began to ease. The candle's flame steadied, its light dancing gently across the walls. And in that simple, sacred calm, she felt the truth of his words come alive again, that peace is not the absence of trouble, but the presence of the one who holds all things together. Outside, the crickets began their nighttime song, weaving a sound that was both ancient and comforting. Somewhere an owl called once, then fell silent again. The world itself seemed to breathe with her, the same breath of creation that had moved over the waters in the beginning. The woman turned from the window and lay down upon her bed. She pulled the blanket over her shoulders and let the stillness cradle her. Her eyes closed slowly, her thoughts drifting toward the one she loved. She pictured him walking along the shoreline, the sand cool beneath his feet, his robe brushing softly against the sea breeze. She imagined his eyes, kind, patient, filled with understanding. And then, just before sleep began to gather her into its arms, she felt a gentle awareness rise within her heart. She was not alone. Even here in the quiet of her small home, the peace of Jesus was near. Not a distant idea, but a living presence, as real as breath, as near as her next heartbeat. The night deepened, but her fear did not. The shadows outside her window no longer felt heavy. They were only reminders that even in darkness, light remains, unseen but unbroken, steady as his love. And as her mind began to drift into dreams, the peace of Christ filled the room like a fragrance that never fades. The stillness was no longer empty. It was holy. The night deepened, and within the quiet chamber, something unseen began to stir, a tender rhythm, as if the very air had taken on a heartbeat of its own. The woman's small oil lamp flickered faintly by the bedside, casting soft waves of light that trembled across the wooden floor. In that dim glow, the peace that had begun to whisper around her heart seemed to grow stronger, more tangible, like a soft presence filling the room. She did not move. She simply breathed, slowly, deeply, as though her lungs had learned the melody of heaven. The stillness felt alive, not empty, not silent, but breathing with her. She could almost feel the breath of peace moving through the room, brushing against her skin, flowing through the air like invisible hands smoothing away the rough edges of her thoughts. Outside, the wind that had earlier drifted through the olive trees grew quieter, gentler, as if even creation had entered a kind of holy pause. The stars above her home gleamed brighter now, piercing the darkness with delicate, golden light. Everything felt wrapped in a divine hush, that mysterious quiet which comes when God draws near, not in thunder or fire, but in the softness of a whisper. She remembered how Jesus once spoke of the Spirit, like the wind, unseen, but always moving, always present. You cannot see where it comes from or where it goes, he had said, but you can feel its touch, and tonight she felt it. The peace that passes all understanding had entered her space, not through effort, not through prayerful striving, but through surrender, through her simple willingness to let go. In her mind, she drifted back to a hillside morning when she had once seen him teaching. The crowds had gathered, restless and weary, yet when he spoke, the air had changed. It was not only the words, but the way he spoke them, each syllable like water upon parched soil. His voice carried gentleness, a patience untouched by the noise of the world. That same voice seemed to echo now, soft as the rise and fall of her own breath. As she rested there, she thought of how often life had rushed past her, days filled with work, with voices demanding, with thoughts crowding her mind. But here, in this small room filled with quiet light, all that faded. What remained was simple: breath, presence, and peace. She began to realize that peace had never truly left her. It had only been waiting for her to slow down enough to notice. The oil lamp sputtered once, then steadied. A faint fragrance of olive and smoke filled the air. In that gentle scent, she felt comforted, as though the aroma itself carried the memory of sacred places, of temples, of fields, of the moments when heaven and earth touched. Peace, she thought, was not a destination to reach, but a presence to receive. She whispered again, this time not in request, but in gratitude. "Thank you, Lord, for being near." No answer came, yet she knew he heard. There was something holy in that silence, not the absence of sound, but the fullness of presence. She sensed that if she could listen deeply enough, she could hear his peace breathing with her, flowing through the room like invisible music. And indeed, something like a melody filled her thoughts. It wasn't from the world outside. No flute or voice or instrument could have made such a sound. It was the song of stillness itself, a soundless hymn woven by the Spirit, reminding her of the words Jesus once spoke to his disciples after the resurrection: "Peace be with you." Those words were not only a greeting, but a gift, one that lingered in the air long after he spoke them. As she pondered, she realized that his peace was unlike anything the world offered. It was not fragile or fleeting. It did not depend on calm circumstances or perfect outcomes. It was strong, quiet, and constant, like a steady light glowing behind every shadow. It had followed her through her days, through sorrow and laughter alike, and now it had come to rest here, surrounding her as she drifted toward sleep. The walls of her room seemed to breathe with her now. Even the smallest things, the creak of the wood, the sigh of the curtain in the breeze, seemed to echo with sacred rhythm. She thought of how the first breath God ever gave humanity carried life itself, and how each breath since then was a continuation of that same gift. In this moment, every inhale felt like receiving grace, every exhale like letting go of fear. The rain continued through the night. whispering upon the roof like a gentle choir of grace. Each droplet that touched the window pane carried its own rhythm, quiet, patient, eternal. And within that rhythm, the woman's heart began to remember. It was not a memory of her own, but one that seemed to belong to every follower who had ever stood near him. The night Jesus calmed the storm. She could see it clearly now, even as her eyelids grew heavy. The Sea of Galilee stretched wide beneath a sky veiled in storm clouds. The disciples were there, their boat tossed upon waves that rose like dark towers. Thunder rolled across the water, and the wind howled with the kind of fury that makes even the bravest soul tremble. They had done all they could, pulled at the ropes, pried out above the wind, tried to steady the small vessel, but nothing worked. Fear had taken hold of them like a cold hand around the heart. And then they saw him. Jesus lay at the stern, resting his head upon a small cushion, sleeping in the midst of the storm. The waves beat against the boat, and yet he slept, calm, still, untouched by the chaos around him. In their fear, the disciples shook him awake. Their voices broke through the roar of the sea. "Master, don't you care that we're perishing?" The woman's heart stirred as she recalled what came next. Jesus rose slowly, his eyes open but serene. He stood upon the rocking boat, his robe damp from the spray. The storm raged, thunder above, waves below, but his presence held a power deeper than both. With a voice that seemed to hold the weight of eternity, he spoke only a few words, quiet but commanding. "Peace, be still." At once the wind ceased. The waves sank into calm. The storm, that wild, untamable fury, bowed before the one who created it. The disciples stood frozen, their fear shifting into awe, and the sea itself became like glass beneath the moonlight. The woman felt the memory wrap around her like a warm cloak. She could almost feel the rocking of the boat ease beneath her, the sound of water softening into silence. In that holy quiet, she sensed the message meant for every heart that has ever trembled, that Jesus does not only silence storms in the sky, he silences them within us, too. She remembered how he had looked at his friends then, not with anger, but with a tender sorrow. "Why are you afraid?" he had asked them. "Do you still have no faith?" It wasn't a rebuke meant to wound. It was an invitation to trust, to see that even when the storm raged the loudest, he had never left their side. He had been in the boat all along. The woman's own thoughts drifted to the storms she had faced, the nights when fear had kept her awake, when worry for tomorrow had pressed upon her chest like a heavy stone. How many times had she cried out like those disciples, wondering if he heard? Yet even now she could see how his peace had always found its way to her, just as the calm had found its way back to the sea. Outside, the rain softened into a hush. The air carried that clean, renewed scent that follows after storms, as though creation itself had been washed and made whole again. She turned slightly beneath her blanket, her mind filled with images of the still sea under moonlight, the quiet presence of Jesus standing at its center, his gaze steady and kind. She imagined his voice once more, the same gentle tone that had once carried across the water, speaking not to the wind this time, but to her own heart. "Peace, be still." And something within her obeyed. The restlessness that had followed her into the evening was gone now. The weight of her worries began to loosen, replaced by the deep certainty that no storm, no matter how fierce, could remove him from her life. His peace was not the absence of waves, but the assurance of his nearness within them. She thought of how even the wind and the sea had known his voice, how creation itself had recognized its maker and fallen silent before him. If the storm could obey, so could her thoughts, so could her fears. She breathed again, slower this time, her spirit sinking into that divine rhythm, the stillness of trust. The room seemed to reflect that peace. The lamp flickered once and steadied, its light thin but unwavering. The shadows softened around her walls, no longer sharp or restless, but gentle and round like folded wings. The rain had stopped, yet she could almost feel the ocean breeze in the air, a holy reminder of that miracle by the sea. She whispered the words aloud, her voice barely more than a breath. "Peace, be still." The phrase carried through the quiet like a prayer and an echo at once. Her eyes closed, and behind them she saw not the fear of the storm, but the face of the one who slept through it. His calm had become her calm. His rest had become her rest, and his peace, that deep, unshakable peace, now filled her dreams like the calm tide returning to the shore. The woman stirred faintly beneath her blanket as the night deepened around her. The memory of the sea and the calming voice of Jesus still lingered, not as a dream, but as a truth echoing quietly within her. Her heart, once restless, now felt slow and steady. Yet something deeper within her yearned to remember more. Not only the miracle of the calm sea, but the heart behind it. The trust that Jesus carried. The trust that allowed him to rest in the storm. Her thoughts drifted back to the dusty roads of Galilee, to the times she had seen him walk among people who were anxious, sick, or desperate. He never hurried, never seemed worried. Even when the crowds pressed in, when the needs seemed endless, when danger shadowed his every step, his spirit remained anchored, serene. She remembered the way he would lift his eyes to heaven before speaking, as if listening to a rhythm only he could hear, the heartbeat of his Father's will. That was what she longed for tonight, that same trust, that deep surrender that had made his peace unbreakable. She remembered sitting on a hillside once, her hands resting in the grass as he spoke to those gathered. The air had been warm and filled with birdsong. Jesus had told them not to worry about tomorrow, how the lilies of the field did not labor or spin, and yet not even Solomon in all his glory was dressed like one of these. She could still hear the calm conviction in his voice, as though every word carried the weight of heaven's certainty. "Your Father knows what you need," he had said. "Seek first his kingdom, and everything else will follow." At the time, those words had felt simple, beautiful, but almost too peaceful for the world she knew. Life, after all, had demands. There were bills to pay, mouths to feed, illnesses that came uninvited. Yet the way Jesus had spoken, the way he had looked at the wildflowers growing freely along the hillside, it had been as if he was unveiling a secret hidden in plain sight. Now, years later, as the candle's last flame flickered beside her bed, that secret began to unfold inside her heart. She realized that trust wasn't born from knowing the outcome, but from knowing the one who held it. Jesus had trusted his Father so completely that even in sleepless storms or silent sufferings, he rested. His peace was not the product of comfort, but of connection, an unbroken faith that love was still in control. Her eyes fluttered open briefly, and she gazed at the dim light. The wax had nearly melted, leaving only a small, steady glow. She thought of how Jesus had said he was the light of the world, and how no matter how small the flames seemed, darkness could never overcome it. That same light, that same peace, burned within her now. She breathed out slowly, as though releasing every weight she still carried. Her worries about tomorrow, the uncertainty, the things she could not fix, began to feel smaller, like pebbles placed beside an endless sea. She whispered, "You trusted, Lord. Help me to trust too." As she lay still, an image rose within her, a memory of Jesus asleep under a tree, his face soft, his body at rest after long hours of walking. The disciples had watched him then, wondering how he could sleep so deeply with so much left undone. But perhaps that was the secret of divine rest. He trusted his Father enough to close his eyes even in an unfinished world. The woman smiled faintly at the thought. She realized she didn't need all the answers to find peace tonight. She only needed to rest in the same faith, the quiet certainty that whatever waited beyond tomorrow, he was already there. Outside, the night held steady. A breeze stirred the curtain, cool and sweet. Somewhere, an animal rustled softly in the brush. The world moved on, but within her heart there was only stillness, that sacred stillness born of trust. Her breathing deepened, each inhale a small act of surrender, each exhale a release of all she could not control. And in that rhythm, She began to feel herself aligned again with the heart of God, the same rhythm Jesus had lived by, the same peace that had carried him through every moment. She remembered once more the look in his eyes, that serene assurance, that gentle confidence that no storm could shake him. He trusted his Father completely, even when misunderstood, even when betrayed. He had walked in peace because he knew he was never alone. "Lord," she whispered again, her voice a thread of sound in the dark, "teach me to rest like you." And as her words faded into the quiet, the peace of perfect trust filled the room once more. Not loud, not dazzling, but steady as the stars outside her window. The candle's flame flickered one last time and went out. But she didn't fear the dark, for within her a greater light remained, the peace of Christ, resting deep in her spirit, teaching her that to trust him was to truly sleep, and to sleep was to rest in his hands. The candle's light faded at last, leaving only the quiet shimmer of moonlight spilling through the small window. Shadows danced gently upon the walls, soft and unthreatening, as though they too had bowed to peace. The woman lay in silence, her breathing slow, her heart steady, and in that silence something sacred began to unfold. The room, once ordinary, now felt like a holy sanctuary. Every beam of wood, every quiet breath of air seemed wrapped in presence. She had prayed before, many times, but tonight felt different. There were no words left to say, and none were needed. The peace she felt was not something she was striving to reach. It had already found her. The night itself had become her cathedral. The stillness was her prayer. The quiet was her worship. Outside, the moon rested high over the valley, pouring its silver light across the sleeping town. Not a sound stirred, no footsteps, no laughter, only the faint rustle of the wind moving gently through olive leaves. It was as though all creation had joined in sacred pause, the world exhaling together under the same breath of peace. And in that vast, listening quiet, she remembered again how Jesus often withdrew from the crowds to pray alone in the night. Sometimes it was upon a mountain, sometimes in the garden, sometimes by the sea. He sought stillness not because he needed escape, but because stillness was where his Father's voice could be heard most clearly. She could almost see him now, his figure silhouetted against the moonlight, kneeling among the trees, his robe brushing against the grass. The air around him would have been filled with the same kind of calm she felt now, the sacred hush that follows when heaven bends near to earth. Her heart swelled with gratitude at the thought that the same peace that surrounded him then now surrounded her. She realized the holy was not confined to temples or sacred mountains. It could fill even the smallest space, a humble room, a quiet bed, a heart at rest. For a long moment she lay there, in awe of it. The air itself seemed to shimmer faintly with invisible holiness, like light diffused through glass. It was the peace of his presence, unspoken, unforced, yet unmistakable. She could feel it move within her like water beneath still earth, gentle yet alive. Her mind drifted back to the stories she had heard as a child, stories of shepherds on a hillside, watching their flocks under this same kind of night sky. How in a moment heaven had broken open above them, and the angel's voice had declared, "Peace on earth, goodwill toward men." She smiled faintly at the memory. That peace had not been a fleeting announcement. It had been a promise, one that still whispered across generations. And tonight it had come to rest here, in this small, unremarkable room, as if to remind her that peace is not found in grandeur, but in surrender. The moonlight shifted slightly, brushing across her face. It was cool, almost tender. She thought again of Jesus praying in the quiet, his eyes lifted toward the heavens, his spirit at one with the Father's will. He had taught his disciples that prayer was not for many words, but for honest hearts. And tonight she finally understood. Her heart was open, and that was enough. As she lay there, she began to sense something deeper than rest, a kind of communion, a silent conversation between her soul and God. No sound, no vision, only awareness that she was seen, known, and loved beyond measure. The peace in the room deepened, stretching beyond her walls, as though the whole night breathed in harmony with divine love. She thought about others in their homes, the weary workers, the lonely widows, the frightened children, and she prayed silently that this same peace might reach them too, that in their darkness they might find what she had found tonight, a stillness that feels alive, a quiet that heals. The woman turned slightly, her face toward the window. The stars seemed closer now, burning bright and steady, their light reflected in her gentle eyes. She wondered if Jesus had ever looked at these same stars, if, as a boy, he had lain under them in Nazareth, and thought of his Father's glory stretched across the heavens. Surely he had. Surely even then he had felt the stillness of creation singing the same song, "Peace, peace, peace." She closed her eyes again, and that thought comforted her. For if the same stars that watched over him now watched over her, then surely she was never alone. The stillness around her had become a sacred shield, not empty silence, but the living peace of God Himself, holding her gently, safely, completely. No temple walls were needed. No perfect prayer required. The sanctuary was here, in this very moment, this breath, this stillness. And as the hours of the night passed on quietly, the woman rested in that truth. Heaven was near, nearer than she had ever known. The peace that filled her room was the same peace that filled the garden, the hillside, the sea. It was the peace of the Savior's presence, endless, holy, and tender as a lullaby to her weary soul. The soft hush of night lingers as the heart turns toward a familiar story, one of love, simplicity, and stillness. The candlelight flickers against the walls of a humble home in Bethany. Shadows swayed gently, like whispered prayers caught between time and eternity. In the quiet corner of the room sits Mary of Bethany, her gaze fixed upon the face of Jesus. She is not distracted by the noise of the world beyond the doorway, nor by the rustle of Martha's busy hands. She is content to be still, to sit, to listen, to simply be in his presence. Outside, the evening hums with the rhythm of ordinary life, footsteps passing, distant voices calling, the sound of water poured into clay jars. But within this small home, eternity seems to pause. The teacher has come not to demand, but to dwell. And Mary's heart understands what words cannot explain, that peace is not found in doing more, but in resting closer. She listens as he speaks. Each word from his mouth feels like the breath of heaven, soothing the ache of days spent striving, healing the wounds no one sees. The world hurries, the soul hungers, yet here, at his feet, there is enough. Martha moves about, serving and preparing, her love for him genuine yet weary. Her heart beats to the rhythm of responsibility. She longs for things to be perfect, the meal ready, the house in order. But in her anxious motion, she does not hear the still invitation that Mary has embraced. Be still and know that I am God. Jesus watches both sisters with eyes that see deeper than the moment. He does not scold Martha's service, yet he gently calls her back to what matters most. Martha, Martha, he says softly, you are anxious and troubled about many things, but only one thing is necessary. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her. The words fall like balm on weary hearts, then and now. In that small room, between the clinking of dishes and the warmth of the evening air, Jesus reveals something eternal. Peace is not the absence of work, but the presence of Him. Perhaps you too have lived many days like Martha, moving from one task to the next, trying to hold everything together while your heart quietly yearns for rest. Perhaps you've heard that same whisper calling you away from the noise, away from the expectations of the world. Come, sit at my feet. Mary's peace did not come from escaping life, but from embracing His nearness in the middle of it. Her choice was not between work and worship, but between distraction and devotion. She chose presence over performance, and in doing so, she found the secret to peace. Close your eyes and imagine that room, the flicker of lamplight, the calm in His voice, the sound of her heart slowing to match His eternal rhythm. You can almost feel the quiet, like warm linen against your skin. You can see His smile, patient, kind, unhurried. The world outside fades into a blur of distant sound. What remains is this: love seated in the stillness. Jesus' peace is not something you earn, it's something you receive. It flows from His presence like gentle light spilling through open windows. It waits in the quiet places of prayer, in the simple moments when you stop running and start breathing again. Like Mary, When you choose to rest at His feet, you discover that what the world calls doing nothing is the most necessary thing of all. He knows your worries, the unseen weight you carry, the thoughts that wake you in the night. Yet He does not ask you to fix them before you come. He simply says, "Come as you are. Sit here a while. Let the world turn without you. Let my peace fill the empty places where striving once lived." Mary's story is not just history. It is a gentle reminder for every restless heart tonight. The Prince of Peace still walks into the rooms of ordinary lives. He still sits beside the weary. He still invites the busy soul to stop and rest, not because the world is finished, but because His love is enough for this moment. And so, as the night deepens and your eyes grow heavy, imagine yourself in that room again. The noise of the day fades. The warmth of His nearness fills the air. You are not rushing anymore. You are resting. You are seen. You are loved. The peace that filled Mary's heart now fills yours. It is the same peace that stilled storms, healed hearts, and whispered over creation, "It is good." So lay it all down tonight, the lists, the worries, the expectations. Sit with Him. Listen. For He is here, and you are exactly where you belong, at His feet, resting in His peace. There are moments in the quiet of night when the heart feels the weight of the world. The room may be still, yet the mind moves endlessly, circling through worries, unfinished thoughts, silent fears. Each one settles like a stone upon the chest, pressing harder with every sigh. But then, somewhere between one breath and the next, something begins to shift. It is not thunderous or dramatic. It is tender, almost imperceptible, like the gentle hand of grace reaching into the unseen places of the soul. Grace has a way of moving quietly, not breaking in, but softly entering where it's welcome. It knows the burden you carry, even the ones you've hidden behind polite smiles and brave faces. It knows the memories that ache, and the disappointments you dare not name aloud. And tonight, as the world sleeps, grace begins its sacred work, lifting, loosening, lightening. You can almost feel it, the gentle release of the heart's tension. The heaviness that once felt immovable begins to rise, as though invisible hands have begun to unlace the knots you've carried for too long. You may not see them, but they are there, the hands of the one who never sleeps, who watches over you with love that will not let go. He whispers, "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." Not rest as the world defines it, not a pause or an escape, but a deep, soul-quieting rest that comes when you finally stop carrying what was never yours to bear alone. Think of the shepherd again, the same gentle figure who leaves the 99 to find the one. He finds you in the thickets of anxiety, in the valleys of exhaustion, in the tangled brambles of guilt and regret. He does not scold or shame. He simply bends down, lifts you gently onto his shoulders, and begins to carry you home. You might whisper, "But Lord, I should be stronger than this." And he answers, "My strength is made perfect in weakness." You might protest, "I've made too many mistakes." And he replies, "My grace is sufficient for you." Grace is the unseen miracle of the weary. It is the divine exchange, your burden for his peace, your striving for his stillness, your guilt for his forgiveness. It does not erase what you've walked through. It redeems it. It turns even the weight of sorrow into the soil from which peace can grow. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine this. Every heavy thought, every unspoken worry, every regret that lingers like a shadow, gathered gently into his hands. You don't have to explain them. You don't have to fix them. Just release them. Let them fall into his keeping. The unseen hands of grace are steady and sure. They know how to carry what you cannot. They have held the wounded, the broken, the afraid, and they hold you now. There is no shame in surrender. There is only freedom. For surrender is not giving up. It is giving over. You might remember the story of Simon of Cyrene, the man who was pulled from the crowd to help carry Jesus' cross. At first it was a burden placed upon him without warning, but as he walked beside the Savior, the weight became something sacred. The same is true for you. What once felt like unbearable weight becomes holy when you let him carry it with you. Every tear you've shed has been noticed. Every sleepless night has been held in his mercy. And now, in this moment, he draws near again, not with noise or spectacle, but with that same quiet power that lifted Mary's heart in Bethany and calmed the storm on Galilee. The air grows softer, lighter, as though heaven itself exhales peace into your lungs. You can almost sense the invisible, the gentle rustle of angel wings, the warmth of unseen hands resting on your shoulders, the voice that whispers, "You are safe now. You can rest." And you do. Slowly, steadily, the heaviness begins to fade. The chains of thought loosen their hold. The memories no longer sting like they used to. What remains is peace, not because the world changed, but because you have been lifted above it, carried by love itself. Grace is doing what you cannot. It carries the weight you were never meant to hold. It restores the breath you thought you had lost. It wraps itself around you like a soft blanket and reminds you that you are not forgotten, not forsaken, not alone. So, as your body grows still and your breathing deepens, let this truth settle into your spirit. You are being carried right now. The hands that shaped the stars are the same hands that hold your heart. And as you drift toward sleep, every burden you once clutched tightly is being taken, not lost, but transformed in his care. Rest, beloved. The unseen hands of grace have found you tonight. They lift, they cradle, they bless. You do not have to try anymore. You only have to rest. For he who carries the world also carries you. There are certain nights when the soul feels heavier than the body, not because of weariness, but because of the quiet weight of what remains unspoken, unresolved, or unforgiven. Sometimes what keeps one awake isn't the noise of the world outside, but the whispers within, the regrets replaying, the words we wish we could take back, the faces we see when we close our eyes. Forgiveness, then, becomes the doorway through which peace enters, and tonight that door begins to open. The air seems gentler now, a soft hum beneath the stillness, as if the heavens themselves breathe forgiveness into the room. Shadows lose their sharpness. The heart, once tense, begins to thaw. There is warmth moving through the unseen, the steady pulse of divine mercy, spreading like sunlight over cold ground. In the quiet, the listener remembers the story of a woman brought before Jesus, accused, condemned, broken by her past. She had been caught in the act of sin, surrounded by voices eager to destroy. Yet when all others raised their stones, Jesus stooped low. He did not meet her with judgment. He met her with grace. He drew in the dust, not to expose her, but to reveal the deeper truth that mercy always writes in softer lines than the world does. "Neither do I condemn you," he said. And in that single sentence, centuries of shame were undone. The crowd disappeared. Her tears turned into release. That moment, pure, wordless forgiveness, still echoes through time, reaching into every heart that longs for peace tonight. Forgiveness is not forgetting, it is freedom. It is letting light return where bitterness once lived. It is choosing to release what poisons the soul. Jesus taught that to forgive is not merely a command, but a healing, a way of unbinding the spirit so it can breathe again. Perhaps as you lie there now, faces rise in your mind, people who hurt you, or those you may have hurt. You might feel the ache of things left undone, words never spoken, apologies that never came. But the voice of the Savior still whispers across the silence. "Peace I leave with you. My peace I give to you." Not a peace that waits for perfection, but one that flows like warm, steady light through the cracks of our humanness. This is the peace of forgiveness. Not sudden, not loud, but steady. It begins with the smallest opening of the heart, a willingness to let go. It doesn't demand that you forget what happened, only that you no longer chain your heart to it. For every act of forgiveness is a release, and with release comes rest. Imagine that warmth again, that slow spreading light. It starts at the center of your chest, a soft glow that expands outward. With each breath, it moves further, through your shoulders, your arms, your fingertips. It travels to the edges of your being, until it fills every corner where bitterness once lived. It glows with the color of sunrise, gentle golds, and quiet pinks. And as it fills you, you can feel the weight you once carried melting away. Forgiveness does not excuse, it transforms. It doesn't erase memory, it redeems it. And the one who forgives becomes lighter, freer, more at peace. In forgiving, you become like the one whose heart knows no end, the one who forgave from the cross, whispering mercy even in his final breath. There, in that moment of surrender, divine peace flowed like blood and light, healing not just the world that stood before him, but every soul that would one day long for that same grace. That includes you. Tonight, you are remembered in that mercy. You are seen, understood, and forgiven. So let your heart rest in this truth. You are no longer defined by what you regret. You are defined by what he redeemed. The light that fills you is not borrowed, it is born of his love. Let it spread toward yourself, toward others, toward the world. Let it reach even those who may never ask for it. For forgiveness, when freely given, turns pain into prayer and memory into peace. And as you breathe in the stillness now, you may notice the air feels lighter, the silence softer. The shadows no longer seem threatening. They are only reminders of where light once entered. Every heartbeat feels calmer. Every thought grows quieter. Forgiveness has made room for peace to stay, not just to visit, but to dwell. And it stays not as a flicker, but as a steady flame, a warmth that glows through every breath, every dream, every part of your being. Tonight, let that peace carry you deeper into rest. You have forgiven. You are forgiven. And that is enough. You can lay everything down now. The past no longer calls your name. Only love does. And love, once found, never leaves. So breathe deeply, beloved. The night is wrapped in mercy. The peace of forgiveness flows through you, warm, steady, eternal. Rest in it now. The night was deep, and all around the world seemed to hold its breath. Inside the small room, the woman's eyelids grew heavy, yet her heart remained awake to a subtler rhythm, a rhythm that whispered across her spirit like a soft wind over the hills of Galilee. She remembered the words of the psalm, the image of the shepherd who leads his sheep beside still waters, who restores the weary soul. And in that memory, she felt something extraordinary, his voice. It was not a voice that thundered or commanded attention. It did not insist or rush. It came as a gentle echo, resonant yet tender, moving across the quiet corners of her heart. She felt it even before she heard it in her mind, a presence that seemed to brush against her spirit, warm and steady, like sunlight spilling through the cracks of a door left slightly open. The shepherd's voice reminded her of the stories she had known since childhood, of flocks resting under open skies, of hillsides bathed in early morning light, of the sheep that trusted without question the one who walked among them. He had spoken, and the sheep had followed. There had been no fear, only confidence in the one who loved and cared for them. That same voice, she realized, still calls across time and space, reaching into hearts like hers tonight. She thought of the disciples walking behind him through dusty roads, their feet tired, their thoughts heavy. Yet when he spoke, they felt guided, not merely directed, but comforted. "Follow me," he said. The simplicity of the words belied the depth of their meaning. It was an invitation to rest, even in the act of moving, to trust, even while unsure, to be still, even when the path was long. Her own heart, weighted by days of worry and nights of unrest, seemed to respond to that call. She imagined herself walking beside him through quiet fields, her hand brushing the tops of wildflowers, the cool air filling her lungs. Each step she took was lighter than the last, as though his voice had reached into the deepest places of her spirit and lifted her burdens one by one. Even in sleep, his presence lingered. She could feel it in the rhythm of her breath, in the subtle ease of her shoulders, in the gentle beating of her heart. The shepherd does not demand perfection, nor does he rush the tired or fearful. He moves at the pace of trust, matching the rhythm of every weary soul, calling softly to those who are lost, guiding them back to the safety of his embrace. She remembered another evening, the one where he spoke of finding the one lost sheep, leaving the 99 safely behind to search for what was missing. The love that compelled him to seek the lost was patient, unwavering, tender, the same love that now echoed across her sleeping heart. She realized that his voice was not only for instruction, but for reassurance. Every whisper of his presence carried the message, "You are known, you are seen, you are loved." The room around her felt sacred in that moment. Every shadow softened, every corner infused with a sense of divine calm. The gentle hum of the night, the rustle of trees, the distant call of an animal, the faint sigh of the wind seemed to harmonize with the shepherd's voice. Even the air itself seemed to breathe with him. She imagined leaning closer, resting her head near his shoulder as he led her through the darkness. The weight of her cares, the endless lists, the unspoken fears, all were lightened by the sheer steadiness of his presence. His voice did not merely speak to the mind, it touched the soul, as if reaching to cradle the very essence of her being. It became clear to her that the shepherd's voice is never absent, even when unnoticed, even when the world is loud, even when our hearts are preoccupied. He speaks, and sometimes it is in the stillness, in the quiet pause between breaths, that his words are heard most clearly. Tonight, she surrendered to that soundless melody, allowing it to echo across her heart, washing through her spirit like a gentle stream. Every tension dissolved, every shadow receded, every restless thought softened. She understood then that the voice of the shepherd was not only guidance, but homecoming, a call to rest in the one who walks beside every wandering soul. And as her body sank deeper into the comfort of the night, she carried the certainty that his voice would continue to echo even in dreams. The night had deepened, yet within the small room a gentle radiance seemed to grow, as if the darkness itself were bending toward light. It was not a light from candles or stars, though their glow lingered faintly against the walls. It was the quiet illumination of love, a presence so tender, so encompassing, that it reached into every corner, filling the hidden spaces of heart and mind. She could feel it there, in the places where shadows of doubt and fear had once lingered, now touched with warmth that seemed to come from within her very soul. She thought of the stories she had heard of Jesus, how he walked among the broken, the weary, the overlooked, and the forgotten, how his love was never superficial, never fleeting. It penetrated even the darkest hearts, bringing them into the quiet radiance of his presence. Every healed blind eye, every whispered prayer answered, every hand lifted from the ground was evidence of a light that refused to be dimmed by the night. The woman pictured herself in one of those moments, standing beside a child afraid of the shadows, or a widow burdened with grief. She imagined his eyes upon them, steady, compassionate, patient, and in that gaze, the shadows fled. The corners that had seemed too hidden, too dark to hold hope, became illuminated, revealing not fear, but the depth of God's love. It was the kind of light that did not blind, but invited one to see clearly, to recognize grace, mercy, and presence even where once there had been only despair. In her own life, she recognized the hidden corners of her heart that needed this illumination, the doubts that crept quietly, the lingering worries that no one else saw, the secret fears she carried like stones in her pocket. She realized now that he had been shining his love there all along, patiently waiting for her to notice. And tonight, in the stillness of her bedroom, that light seemed to reach every edge, every fold, every shadowed nook, turning anxiety into calm, sorrow into comfort, and isolation into companionship. She recalled the story of Zacchaeus, perched high in the sycamore tree, wanting to see Jesus. His world was small, confined, full of judgment from others, yet when Jesus called his name, the light of acceptance reached him, and his hidden life, the corners no one had explored, was brought into the warmth of love. That same light now poured into her own hidden spaces. She could feel it penetrating the quiet, subtle places where fear or shame once lingered, touching them with a peace that was unshakable. Outside, the night air was still, yet the subtle presence of that love seemed to fill the room like a soft glow. It was quiet, yet undeniably real. The kind of quiet that wraps around the heart and whispers, "You are seen. You are loved. You are not alone." She could almost imagine the way Jesus' gaze rested upon her, not in judgment, but in tender affirmation, affirming all she had been through, all she had endured, and all she had quietly carried. The light of his love was patient. It did not rush, did not demand, did not overwhelm. It simply shone, illuminating corners she had forgotten existed, revealing beauty where she had only known fear. It was the kind of illumination that invited rest, the kind that let her exhale and simply be. And as her body grew heavier with sleep, she felt that light follow her, filling the space beneath her ribs, the edges of her mind, and the hidden chambers of her heart. She imagined it moving softly, like dawn brushing over hills, unhurried, inevitable, tender. She did not need to chase it or call it. It was already there, quietly revealing the truth that every shadow she feared was held within his love. It became clear that love itself was light, and light itself was a form of rest. There was no need to struggle against darkness, no need to push back the shadows with force. All that was required was presence, to breathe, to notice, to accept. And in that acceptance, she could feel herself becoming lighter, freer, more at peace than she had been all day. Even her thoughts began to slow. The small anxieties, the racing lists, the constant mental chatter softened into stillness. It was as if the light of his love had not only illuminated her heart, but had quieted the restless parts of her mind, creating room for peace to dwell. The woman realized then that the quiet corners of her life, the places she often neglected or feared, were never meant to be dark or empty. They were meant to be filled with this light, a light that neither fades nor fails, a light that warms without burning, a light that speaks of the eternal constancy of his love. And as she lay back, sinking into that realization, sleep began to approach not as escape, but as an embrace, a gentle folding into the light itself. The night was serene, and in that quiet, a subtle rhythm filled the room. The steady pulse of life, gentle and unhurried. She lay on her bed, eyes half closed, feeling the steady rise and fall of her chest. Each inhale seemed to draw in more than air. It drew in something unseen yet tangible, the very breath of God. It was a breath that moved softly, yet profoundly, filling the empty spaces within her heart, the corners of her mind, and the depths of her weary spirit. She imagined the scenes of Jesus teaching his disciples by the Sea of Galilee. The wind had brushed lightly over the water, carrying the scent of salt and wildflowers, and his voice had moved across the waves with calm authority. He had spoken of life, of trust, of surrender, and his words, carried by the breeze, seemed to enter the hearts of those who listened, filling them with a quiet assurance. That same breath, she realized, now entered her own quiet space, invisible yet present, steady and alive. It was as if each inhalation brought a gentle wave of his presence, washing over the places within her that had grown weary from worry or doubt. Each exhale carried away tension, releasing the tight grip of fear, regret, and fatigue. The rhythm of her breathing matched the rhythm of his care, constant, reliable, and tenderly attentive. She thought of the story of the disciples asleep in the boat during the storm. The waves rose, the wind howled, yet Jesus entered and spoke simply, "Peace, be still." The same breath that calmed the sea now whispered to her soul. It moved quietly into the dark corners of her fears, softening them, reminding her that she was never truly alone. The storm may rage around her, but his breath was a steady anchor, a quiet assurance that all would be well. There is a sacred intimacy in this divine breathing, she realized, a closeness that cannot be measured by sight or sound. It is a presence that fills every silent space, reaching where words cannot. The soft rhythm seemed to speak directly to her heart. I am with you. I see you. I hold you. Her mind wandered gently, like a leaf carried on a slow current, recalling other moments of his quiet guidance. A blind man touched by his hands, a child held close in a crowded room, a woman forgiven in her shame. In each moment, his presence had entered quietly, unobtrusively, yet with transformative power. This was the same gentle breath that now filled the room, invisible but tangible, and she felt it seep deeper into her being with every slow inhalation. It was not a force that demanded, but a presence that invited. She did not have to earn it, deserve it, or even understand it fully. She only needed to be still, to breathe, to allow the divine breath to move through her quietly. And as she did, she felt the knots in her chest loosen, the tension in her shoulders soften, and the unsteady rhythm of her thoughts settle into a calm cadence. In the darkness, she pictured his hands reaching toward her, guiding the breath, ensuring it touched every hidden place of her heart, every corner where fear had lingered, every shelf of memory packed with worry, every locked chamber of doubt. All were visited by the same steady, life-giving breath that had walked beside humanity for centuries. It was patient, infinite, and unrelenting in its tenderness. As she exhaled, the world outside seemed to grow softer, less urgent, more distant. The gentle breathing of God entered not just her lungs, but her heart and mind, weaving peace into every thought, every emotion, every fiber of her being. It was a breath that carried reassurance, healing, and love, flowing freely and quietly, demanding nothing, yet giving everything. And in that sacred exchange, the inhale of life, the exhale of release, she found herself melting into rest. Sleep approached not as a retreat, but as a sacred response to his presence. Every breath became a prayer without words, a conversation without sound. She was held, nurtured, and enfolded into the rhythm of God Himself. Tonight she realized she did not need to carry the weight of the world. She did not need to chase answers, or organize her thoughts, or fight her fears. The gentle breath of God was already moving through her, filling her quiet spaces, touching her hidden places, and inviting her into perfect rest. The night had grown still, yet within the quiet room a presence lingered, subtle, unwavering, and profoundly tender. It was not announced with fanfare, nor marked by any dramatic sign. It was the calm assurance of Jesus' presence settling into every part of the soul like a soft, steady tide. The woman felt it first as a sense of weightlessness, as though the burdens she had carried for days, months, or even years were being gently laid down beside her, removed not by her own effort, but by the steady, unseen hands of love. She thought again of the evenings when she had walked along the hills near Galilee, imagining Jesus speaking to his disciples. How often he had assured them, even in the face of storms and uncertainty, that they were not alone. His presence had a quiet authority, not of force, but of steady comfort, a reassurance that whatever fear, doubt, or worry might press upon them, they were safe in Him. That same calm presence now rested around her, softening her edges, easing the tension from her muscles, and quieting the rush of her thoughts. It was more than a feeling. It was a reality that seeped into every part of her being. She realized that presence does not always arrive with visible signs or audible words. Sometimes it comes quietly, a deep, steady awareness that someone trustworthy is near, someone who knows your fears, your history, your heart, and yet does not reject you. The assurance was not conditional. It did not rely on her strength, her goodness, or her ability to act. It simply was. The woman pictured a field at dawn, soft mist drifting above the earth. The light slowly touched every blade of grass, revealing the beauty that had been there all along, even before the sun rose. This is how his presence felt now. A quiet illumination, a gentle touch across every hidden place of her spirit. Shadows of worry, guilt, and fear were softened, their edges blurred by the certainty that she was being held fully and completely by the one who created her. She thought of the disciples again, eyes wide as they watched him walk across water, hearts pounding with fear. In that moment, his calm voice echoed across the waves. "Take courage, it is I. Do not be afraid." And immediately they felt the assurance settle in their hearts. Tonight, that same reassurance whispered across the landscape of her mind. She could not see it, yet she felt it, a presence so steady that it anchored her thoughts, slowed her racing pulse, and settled the restless stirrings of the night. Her eyelids grew heavier, and in the stillness she realized that the calm assurance of his presence was not just a comfort, it was transformative. It reshaped her perception of the night. The darkness was no longer something to fear. The quiet was no longer a reminder of loneliness. The silence itself became a sanctuary. She could feel the peace spreading from her chest outward, touching her shoulders, her arms, even the tips of her fingers, as though her entire body were being wrapped in gentle, invisible hands. This presence carried with it the sense of belonging that every soul longs for. It reminded her that she was not wandering aimlessly, that she was known, seen, and loved. Every anxious thought that had come earlier in the day now seemed lighter, more manageable. The worries of tomorrow receded into a soft, distant hum, no longer pressing against the quiet comfort of this moment. She thought of those around her, friends, family, neighbors, and wondered if they too had felt this same peace, this same quiet assurance. She imagined it extending like a soft glow from her own heart, touching the lives of those she loved, a ripple of calm that reached beyond her own rest into the lives of others. As the minutes passed, the calm presence did not waver. It stayed steady and unshakable, as if to remind her that this was not a fleeting sensation or a temporary comfort. This presence is eternal. This is the same presence that had walked through gardens, along lakesides, and across dusty roads centuries ago. It is the same presence that waits patiently for each wandering soul, ready to settle it in its quiet embrace. And in that stillness, the woman finally let go. She did not need to fight, to plan, to solve, or to strive. She simply rested in the awareness that he was here, The calm assurance of his presence had settled deeply into her heart, and for the first time in a long while, she felt completely safe to surrender, to breathe, and to sleep. The night stretched quietly, a velvet expanse around her, yet it was no longer empty or silent in the way that brings unease. Instead, it felt alive with a subtle, tender presence, wrapping the room in warmth and familiarity. She lay still, her chest rising and falling with the rhythm of her breath, sensing the comfort of his nearness. It was as if a gentle hand rested on her heart, smoothing the rough edges of the day, quieting every anxious thought, and reminding her softly that she was not alone. She remembered the moments when Jesus had stopped to rest beside the water's edge, when he had invited the weary to sit with him. His presence had a quiet power, not the loud, commanding authority of the world, but the deep, enduring reassurance of one who knows the heart intimately. In his nearness there was release. In his touch there was healing. And tonight she could feel that same comfort moving through her own soul, brushing away the tension she had carried without noticing. It was not an energetic or urgent kind of presence. It was calm, patient, and steady. It spoke in silence, yet the message was clear. You may lay down your burdens. You may rest. You are safe. No longer did she need to hold on to the worries of the day or the fears that lingered in the shadows. Each concern, each thought that had pressed upon her heart seemed lighter, softened by the simple fact of his nearness. She thought of the story of the disciples who had been worn from long journeys, their bodies weary from walking, their minds restless with questions and uncertainty. Jesus did not chide them or demand more. He simply came, offering himself as rest. He invited them to lean on him, to trust his timing, to let his presence carry what they could not. There, beside the lake shore or under the shade of an olive tree, they experienced the calm reassurance of his company. And now she understood that the same invitation extended to her. In her mind, she pictured the soft golden light of dawn touching the hills, though it had yet to arrive outside her window. This light was a symbol, a gentle illumination of hope and peace that his presence provided. It seemed to enter even the quiet, overlooked spaces of her heart, the hidden corners where doubt and fear had lingered longest. Those dark places, which had felt impossible to reach before, now glowed softly, bathed in the comfort of his love. She noticed how even the smallest motions, the slowing of her breath, the gentle beat of her heart, reflected the ease that his presence brought. Every worry seemed to pause, every thought softened. She could feel the rhythm of the evening aligning with the rhythm of her soul. In that alignment, a profound restfulness settled over her, one that had little to do with sleep itself, and everything to do with being known, seen, and loved. Perhaps, she reflected, that is what he meant when he spoke of finding peace in him. It is not merely a cessation of activity, but a surrender to presence, a yielding to love. The comfort of his nearness has a gravity of its own, not heavy, but grounding, anchoring the soul in a quiet certainty that transcends circumstance. Even as she lay in her bed, she could sense his attention upon her life, gently acknowledging every effort, every struggle, every quiet sorrow. There was no judgment, no demand, only a calm recognition that she was valued beyond measure. The simple awareness of that presence seemed to untangle the knots of worry, replacing them with a tender serenity that moved through her whole being. She breathed slowly, allowing herself to feel the weight of this comfort. It was not fleeting. It did not rely on perfection or achievement. It was steady, unwavering, and patient, like a river that runs quietly, but inevitably nourishes all it touches. She understood that rest does not mean the absence of difficulty. It means the presence of Him, carrying her through the night, the moments of uncertainty, and the quiet hours of reflection. Tonight, she allowed herself to sink fully into that comfort, to trust in the steadiness of His presence, and to feel the peace that comes from knowing she is held by someone eternal. Her heart grew still, her thoughts softened, and in the gentle embrace of His love, her soul rested deeply, fully, and completely, prepared for the dreams that would follow, wrapped in the calm assurance that she is never alone. The room was wrapped in quiet darkness, yet within her a subtle illumination glimmered, not from the moon or a distant street lamp, but from the presence of Him who holds all things. It was a light unlike any other, not harsh or blinding, but gentle, steady, unwavering. She could feel it in the very air around her, brushing softly across her cheeks, tracing the curves of her shoulders, and filling the spaces where shadows once lingered. Even the deepest, most persistent fears of night could not dim it. Even the memories that haunted her did not overwhelm it. She remembered the stories Jesus had told of light piercing darkness, of lamps placed carefully on stands so their glow might reach every corner of a room, of a woman who searched for a lost coin, sweeping the floor patiently until the glimmer finally appeared, of His own journey, walking in the midst of night and chaos, yet carrying a light that no storm could extinguish. These stories were not merely tales of the past. They were assurances for tonight, a reminder that darkness, no matter how pervasive, is never stronger than His love and presence. Even the small shadows in her mind, the worries, regrets, and quiet anxieties that arose when the world slowed, began to pale in the glow of His light. She could almost see it, a soft golden radiance, moving through every hidden corner of her thoughts, illuminating every darkened shelf of memory, every quiet place of fear. Where she had once felt uncertainty, there was now clarity. Where once worry had held her tightly, there was now freedom to simply breathe. She thought of the disciples hiding in the upper room, frightened after the night of betrayal. Fear had weighed upon them like a heavy cloak. Yet the morning came, and with it the risen Christ appeared, bringing light into their despair. The same light that reached them reached her tonight. She could not see him with her eyes, yet she could feel him, a presence that dispelled shadows simply by being near, a light that no darkness could overpower. Even her body responded to this illumination. Her shoulders loosened. Her chest expanded in gentle breaths. The tension in her muscles melted into a quiet warmth. Every small tremor of anxiety, every restless thought seemed to soften, as if being touched by an invisible hand. It was as though his light not only filled her mind, but radiated into her very being, bringing rest and calm she had not known she was capable of feeling. She realized that this light does not depend on circumstances. The night outside may be long, the world may feel heavy and uncertain, and her mind may still wander to what-ifs, but the light of his presence does not waver. It is steadfast, eternal, and patient. It penetrates darkness without effort, shines in spaces where no human eye can see, and gently reminds the soul that it is held in safety, regardless of the storms that rage beyond the walls. She imagined herself walking through a darkened garden, the moon hidden behind clouds, the path uncertain. Yet the light moved before her, a quiet, unwavering flame that guided each step, turning the unknown into safe passage. The shadows still existed, yet they no longer intimidated her. They could not touch her in the presence of this radiant love. And just as he guided her steps, she understood that his light guides her heart, mind, and spirit, illuminating even the places she thought unreachable. It was a deeply intimate kind of light, one that does not call attention to itself, yet transforms everything it touches. It whispers to the heart, "You are safe. You are loved. You are seen." It rests on the soul like a soft blanket, not exposing weakness, but covering it with strength. It does not force peace. It invites it, gently, persistently, tenderly. Even as her eyelids grew heavier and sleep approached, she felt the glow of his light remain, steady and enduring. It was not a fading ember, but a steady flame, moving into every quiet corner, every thought, every dream yet to come. The darkness could exist, yes, but it no longer mattered. Its power was no match for him. And so with each breath and each beat of her heart, she allowed herself to rest fully in this truth. Even the darkest night cannot overcome his light. She was held, illuminated and secure. Sleep approached not as escape, but as a gentle surrender into a presence that never abandons. The night had grown deepest, and yet within her room there was a profound stillness that felt alive. It was not the absence of sound, but the presence of something infinitely gentle, the embrace of Jesus' eternal peace. She lay fully, without tension, feeling the warmth of his nearness wrap around her like a soft, protective cloak. Every breath she took seemed to carry a whisper of his care, moving steadily through her chest, spreading warmth and calm into every corner of her being. She recalled all the nights she had lain awake with restless thoughts, weighed down by worry, regret, or uncertainty. But tonight was different. Tonight, the gentle rhythm of his presence filled the room, like a slow-moving tide reaching the shores of her heart. She felt it in her chest, in the tip of her fingers, in the subtle rise and fall of her body. It was a calm, steady assurance, a knowledge that all was well because he was there, the eternal shepherd, holding her soul with care that never falters. The stories of old moved through her mind, each a reflection of this same peace. She remembered him walking beside the disciples, calming storms with a word, healing the broken, feeding the hungry, forgiving the lost. Each act of love, each tender glance, was a reminder that he enters the life of every soul with the same unwavering intention to restore, to comfort, and to bring rest. Now that same presence flowed into her tonight. Her thoughts softened, drifting like clouds across a pale dawn sky. She allowed herself to remember every small joy and every quiet sorrow without resistance, knowing that his peace could hold it all. There was no need to sort, to solve, or to control. The eternal embrace of his love was wide enough to contain everything she had carried, everything she had feared, and everything she hoped for. And in that realization, her chest lifted with release, her shoulders softened, and her spirit began to sink deeper into stillness. She pictured herself lying in a quiet garden, the stars stretching endlessly above, a cool breeze rustling the leaves. In that image, she felt his hand upon her heart, a soft touch that did not demand, did not judge, but simply reassured, "You are safe, you are loved, you are held." Every heartbeat seemed to echo that truth, a steady rhythm of care that needed no words. She let herself rest in that heartbeat, surrendering fully to the comfort it brought. As her body grew heavier, sleep approached, not as an interruption, but as a continuation of this peaceful presence. She understood that true rest is more than the absence of motion. It is the experience of being fully cradled in love that is unchanging, eternal, and tender. She did not need to worry about what morning might bring, nor about the shadows that occasionally pressed against her mind. Those fears were small, inconsequential, in the face of a presence that was larger, steadier, and infinite. The gentle embrace of his eternal peace seemed to spread outward, beyond the room, beyond herself. She imagined it moving like light through the world, touching hearts, calming spirits, lifting burdens. Even unseen and unheard, his peace reaches across every life, flowing quietly, patiently, endlessly. And tonight she was fully enveloped in it. She breathed slowly, savoring the rhythm of rest. Each inhalation brought warmth, each exhalation released tension. Every thought, every small ache of worry, every restless fragment of mind, all dissolved in the certainty that he was there. No one else could hold her in the same way. No effort of her own could bring the same deep, sustaining calm. She only needed to rest, to be still, and to feel his presence fill her completely. Her eyelids lowered fully now, and she felt the steady, soft pulse of peace move through her limbs, her chest, her mind, and her heart. She was ready to sleep, cradled by love, anchored in eternity. The world outside continued in its rhythms, but she was untouched by its rush, sheltered in the gentle, unwavering arms of the one who never leaves. And so, as the last flickers of wakefulness fade, the night carries her deeper into calm. The soft breath of God lingers, a tender whisper at the edge of consciousness, reminding her that she is never alone. Every shadow, every lingering worry dissolves in the steady warmth of his presence. Sleep does not steal her away. It carries her gently into the arms of love, where her soul can rest fully. She feels the weight of the day fall away, each concern released with every exhale. The rhythm of her heart matches the quiet pulse of eternity, steady, comforting, and unbroken. Here in the hush of night, she does not need to strive, to plan, or to fix what cannot be fixed. She only needs to surrender to the peace that surrounds her, flowing gently, invisibly, yet undeniably. In this sacred rest, she imagines his hand brushing across her hair, his presence warming her chest, his love whispering through the very fibers of her being. There is no fear here, no pressing need to act, only quiet assurance that she is held, cherished, and infinitely known. Every breath becomes a prayer without words, every heartbeat a testament to His faithfulness. And as sleep deepens, the comfort of His presence remains. It will linger through the night, filling dreams with light, lifting spirits with hope, and surrounding her with eternal peace. She drifts fully into rest, knowing that the same peace that filled her heart tonight will continue to guard her, cradle her, and love her through every moment until morning.